What is up, everybody? I'm back with another video, man. Terry Gummer see how the Phoenix Suns went from the worst team in the NBA to the NBA Finals in 2 years by a legend of winning. Let's get into it.
Even some teams that they've called, I'm told, as just a dump, like, we'll give you Chris Paul for free, those teams are like, we're good. So the value just is not.
I think that Devin Booker should arrange to have himself kidnapped.
He's a good player. He's not a lottery pick, though.
No, he's not.
Maybe he'll thrive in, say, a Lou Williams role. We know Lou Will can get buckets. He's done it for a lot of teams, but people don't think of him as a franchise player.
It's great to see Book playing well and Phoenix playing well, but get my man out of Phoenix. It's not good for him. It's not good for his career.
I feel like you got a few things off your chest here tonight.
Mm.
I just feel bad because
They eat no words.
Phoenix, they got the best fans in the world. They deserve better.
Okay.
I'm done with not making the playoffs. I'm serious. It's probably my last year ever not making the playoffs.
And this has been a dream season for the Phoenix Suns. Phoenix Suns, for the first time in 28 years, are going back to the NBA Finals.
So, after a 10-year playoff drought, the Phoenix Suns not only find themselves with a postseason appearance, but they finally made the NBA Finals, which is the first time in franchise history since 1993. Now, of course, there does need to be some context applied in the level of success that we've seen from this Phoenix Suns team this postseason run. However, that doesn't mean that the level of success that this Suns team has seen throughout this season isn't impressive. And the reason why I say that is because the Suns, before the playoffs even began, were already overachieving. They were already proving plenty of people wrong, and quite frankly, this video was just past due. And because the success that the Suns team has
You could have never told me at the beginning of the season that the Suns were going to be in the finals, bro.
achieved this year is a team effort, I've deemed it necessary to not just highlight one or two players, but instead break down how exactly we got here. Because this Phoenix team, going from a 19-win franchise to an NBA Finals appearance, is not only very impressive, but something that many people, including myself, was not anticipating. Now, in this video, I'm not going to detail everything that has happened in the past 10 years out in Phoenix, mainly because I've already produced that video, and I'll leave a link to it at the end of this video so you can check it out, and it is a very interesting one. However, I will give you an abridged version just so you can understand the context and why it is impressive that this Suns team has found themselves in the NBA Finals. We begin in the mid-2000s when the Phoenix Suns were the pinnacle of innovation. At the time, the Suns were led by Steve Nash and Amar'e Stoudemire, and following that duo was a roster specifically tailored to maximize the potential of a Mike D'Antoni offense. And between 2005 and 2010, not only did the Suns push the imagination and open the mind of many basketball intellects to efficient basketball, but more importantly, it had led to some of the most successful seasons in franchise history. Unfortunately, that success did not translate to a championship or not even a finals appearance. And after 2010, once D'Antoni was no longer the head coach, Stoudemire decided to take his talents to New York, and Steve Nash's impact started to deteriorate largely because of age. Phoenix started to spiral down a path of inadequacy that resulted in a massive amount of losing. The lack of winning surprisingly paused in 2014 when a rambunctious group of overachievers in Phoenix finished the season with a record of 48-34. Leading that 2013-2014 Suns roster was star guard Goran Dragic, as well as a few other pieces that had enough potential that would leave any Suns fan optimistic. And even the front office out in Phoenix, led by general manager Ryan McDonough, attempted to add to this team by adding a young, determined Isaiah Thomas. But unfortunately, not only did this acquisition not add any success to this team, but it led to further disappointing seasons in the near future. Within a 3-year span, the Suns would not only deteriorate to a 24-win ball club, but they also fired their head coach Jeff Hornacek, and practically every important piece that participated in the 48-win 2014 season was no longer on the roster, except for Eric Bledsoe, and even he was voicing his opinion about the ball club and was clearly looking to be moved as well. Which brings us to the 2017 offseason. After a 24-58 season that was headlined with several Eric Bledsoe rumors, internal dysfunction, and a slight glimpse of hope that Devin Booker could one day become a face of the franchise.
The fact that he dropped 70 and lost that game, crazy.
The only thing that was certain in Phoenix is that there were going to be major changes made in the near future. And unfortunately, the first major change that was made to the roster in the draft really wasn't a positive one. With the 4th overall pick in the 2017 draft class, the Phoenix Suns selected Josh Jackson, a 6'8" forward out of Kansas that's, let's just say, really hasn't worked out too much in the NBA so far. However, looking back at it, and if we were to be reasonable, the Phoenix Suns really didn't miss out on any other great prospects outside of De'Aaron Fox. So I am inclined to just give them a pass. And they were able to make up for their mistake later on in the offseason by extending TJ Warren, as well as keeping James Jones a part of the organization after he retired and hired him as a VP of basketball operations. But that is where the positivity stops. Later on in the offseason, Brandon Knight was ruled out for the remainder of the year due to a torn ACL. Rookie Davon Reed would miss 4 to 6 months due to a left meniscus injury. Head coach Earl Watson would lose his job just 3 games into the regular season. And on the same day Earl Watson was fired, Eric Bledsoe basically just dropped a tweet letting it be known very clear that he wanted no parts of this Phoenix Suns rebuild. And with that tweet went out the window any leverage that the Phoenix Suns thought that they could have entering any trade conversations with Eric Bledsoe. And because of this, once Bledsoe was finally traded to the Bucks, in return the Suns received Greg Monroe and a late 1st round pick. The Suns would finish the regular season with a record of 21-61.
Oh
and more specifically, in the last 29 games of the regular season, the Suns were only able to go home with 3 wins. The only 3 positive takeaways of this year is that Devin Booker continued to show star potential, the Suns eventually found themselves a new head coach, and for the first time in franchise history, the Suns were finally awarded the 1st overall pick, which honestly could not be better timing. Entering the 2018 draft, this class featured a plethora of very talented young prospects, from a young Luka Doncic that already showed all-time great potential to ACC Player of the Year Marvin Bagley. But with the 1st overall pick, the Phoenix Suns went in a different direction and selected 6'11" big man out of Arizona, DeAndre Ayton. Now, to be 100% transparent, DeAndre Ayton was a great selection for the Phoenix Suns. Not only was his talent and skills so elite that he was already drawing comparisons to all-time great big men such as Joel Embiid and David Robinson, but possibly more importantly, Ayton was a perfect fit for a Suns team that desperately needed some presence inside. But of course, the selection had its fair share of criticism, with Luka Doncic still available on the board and many experts believing that Doncic had the potential to be the next all-time great star in the NBA. The age-old question of should you draft talent over fit was certainly highlighted throughout the entire draft, as well as the days following. And the way that the Suns started the 2018-2019 regular season certainly didn't favor the selection of Ayton over Doncic. But before I get too ahead of myself, there was another addition that was made during draft night that went under the radar for many people. With the 16th overall pick, the Phoenix Suns selected Zaire Smith, but traded him as well as a future 1st round pick to the Philadelphia 76ers, and in return, they received the 10th overall selection, which turned out to be 6'6" guard out of Villanova, Mikal Bridges. Mikal Bridges entered the NBA not really being dominant in one area of basketball. Because of this, for many fans, it was really hard to identify the type of role that he would play on any team. However, if you watch Mikal in Villanova, his ability to be a jack of all trades was actually positive. His upside defensively made it possible for him to defend multiple positions, and as long as he was able to be a consistent 3-point shooter, picking up a young, athletic 3-and-D player is a really good addition in today's league. But it would take some while for that to manifest. After the first 28 games in the 2018-2019 season, the Phoenix Suns had a record
19 wins in that 82 games, bro. That is so bad.
Of 4-24, and eventually finished the season with only 19 games in their win column, making it the 2nd worst record in franchise history, as well as one of the worst teams in the modern NBA. The result of this level of losing meant that general manager Ryan McDonough would eventually lose his job, and to replace him, James Jones would eventually be promoted to the general manager position. And honestly, the decision to move in a different direction from a front office perspective might have been the best decision that Phoenix has made in years, because it's very clear that the Suns needed to do a better job at producing winning basketball, especially since Devin Booker started to be vocally irritable about the losing situation he consistently found himself in within his short time in Phoenix. And with that frustration crystal clear, James Jones had a lot to change, and he did it immediately. Head coach Igor, after 1 year service, was fired, and to replace him was the assistant head coach out in Philadelphia, Monty Williams, who previously had head coaching experience. During the draft, the Suns, who had the 6th overall pick, decided to make a bold move and trade it down in the draft, and in return they received the 11th overall pick as well as Dario Saric. With the 11th overall pick, the Suns selected Cameron Johnson, which shocked many people, mainly because most experts believe that Cameron Johnson was not good enough to be selected with a lottery pick. Later on in the offseason, the Suns would sign Ricky Rubio and bring back Kelly Oubre, but of course, everything wasn't perfect. Earlier in the offseason, for whatever reason, the Phoenix Suns traded TJ Warren to the Indiana Pacers, which was a part of a 3-team trade, and the only thing that the Suns received in return was cash consideration. And also, right before the season began, unfortunately, DeAndre Ayton, who was preparing for his sophomore season, failed a drug test, so he was suspended for the first 25 games of the regular season. However, early on, the Suns were still somewhat impressive. In the first 10 games of the regular season, Phoenix had a record of 6-4, and then if you fast forward to the All-Star break, the Phoenix Suns had a record of 22-33. Yes, I understand that's still a losing record, but it is a noticeable improvement from the 19-win season that the Suns are trying to grow upon. Later on in the month, Kelly Oubre was ruled out for the remainder of the season due to a right meniscus tear, which then shoved Mikal Bridges in the starting lineup, which gave the young swingman the opportunity to prove how valuable he can be to this roster. But before he could do that, unfortunately,
and Kelly Oubre, bro, if you was just been on the team for one more season, you know what I'm saying? You could have been on the, you know what I'm saying, could have been in the finals right
March
now.
11th, 20.
But you're gonna bounce back, you know what I'm saying? Curry, Clay coming back next year, you know what I'm saying? You can bounce back.
The NBA announced the regular season to be suspended until further notice thanks to COVID-19. With the NBA season
really go Bear
suspended and a lot of speculation on how serious COVID-19 was, it wasn't clear on what would happen next up until June 11th when the league finally announced the restart date of July 30th. And while everyone was getting prepared for the NBA to restart, the front office out in Phoenix continued to make additions to a roster that had a lot to prove. So on June 30th, Phoenix signed 6'1" veteran point guard Cameron Payne, an acquisition that completely went under the radar, mainly because the years leading up to this moment, Cameron Payne was known as a journeyman, and in his last few stops, he was struggling to convince an organization to give him a chance longer than just a 10-day contract. And once the NBA season rebooted, something magical happened with the Suns team. For 8 straight games, the Suns went on a tear and were easily one of the most impressive stories that the NBA had to offer after the restart. Within that 8-game stretch, Devin Booker was a 30-point scorer while also recording 5 rebounds and 6 assists.
Bro, if I was in the NBA, I would be so scared to go up with a dunk or something, bro. Because you might land on somebody's leg like how Kyrie did. Bro, that is so scary.
Assists and did it while shooting 50% from the field. DeAndre Ayton's development as a big man in this league was immense, and both Cameron Johnson and Mikal Bridges were double-digit scorers while shooting lights out from behind the arc.
But he put that literally from half.
The 8-game winning streak proved that the Suns had something very special on their hands. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough for the Suns to make a postseason appearance, but it did leave a lot of people interested to see what would happen next out in Phoenix. And to maximize that young talent, the front office out in Phoenix decided to continue to make massive changes to the roster in the upcoming offseason. Which basically brings us to this season. During the offseason, the Suns made major additions to this roster, drafting Jalen Smith with the 10th overall pick in the first round, signing more veterans to the roster such as Jay Crowder and Etuan Moore, but easily the biggest and most controversial addition that the Phoenix Suns made to their roster heading into the 2020-2021 year is trading for Chris Paul. At the time, there were a lot of questions on what type of player to expect from someone of Chris Paul's age. Injuries have been a problem throughout his career, and tying up north of $40 million, virtually losing any financial flexibility that you would want to have with a young roster, might not be worth it if Chris Paul is just going to leave in a year or two, which were many people's thoughts at the time, since no one really thought that the Suns were going to compete for a championship. But the Suns quickly surprised everyone. In the first 10 games of the regular season, the Suns had a 7-3 record. After 25 games, a 16-9 record. And after 35 games, right at the All-Star break, the Suns had a record of 24-11, making it one of the best records in the NBA. Both Devin Booker and Chris Paul were made All-Stars, And the conversation around the NBA community about the Phoenix Suns went from this young, inexperienced roster to a team that legitimately might make a deep postseason run. By the end of the season, the Suns finished with a top 5 offense, a top 10 defense, but more importantly, the Phoenix Suns finished the regular season with a record of 51-21,
move. Oh my
making
God,
it
that
the
was a good
second best
move.
record in the NBA.
Oh
Which
my
more or less brings us to where we are today.
Bro, what was he doing?
Again, granted, there are several contexts to how we got here with the Suns. In the first round, they beat a Los Angeles Lakers team that did not have Anthony Davis present throughout the entire series, and even when he was there, he alongside LeBron James were both injured and were not playing 100%. In the second round, the Suns matched up and beat a Nuggets team that, even though did feature an MVP in Nikola Jokic, but unfortunately did not feature their starting star guard in Jamal Murray. And finally, in the conference finals, Phoenix matched up with a Clippers team that did not have Kawhi Leonard available. Now, personally, I am not going to be ignorant on the possibility that the Phoenix Suns benefited significantly from these teams dealing with major injuries to major players on the roster. And because of that, I thoroughly understand where the skeptics come from. But even with me acknowledging those factors, honestly, it doesn't matter if the Suns win or lose the NBA Finals or if they were knocked out in the first round of the playoffs, because no one saw this coming. No one thought the Suns would be this good. Few people thought Chris Paul would be this impactful this long into his career. Even a smaller amount of people thought that Devin Booker could be a franchise star that could lead a team to a championship. And I would argue that even fewer people thought that the role players surrounding that duo would be this impactful this early on within their short time in Phoenix. And because this Suns team has exceeded expectations by such a wide margin, as well as the fact that the Suns are just a really good team. I mean, we have to admit, I know many people want to belittle what this team has accomplished, but just statistically speaking, look at the numbers that they put up. Again, this is a very, very impressive team. And because of that as well, I personally have no problem whatsoever giving this Suns team the benefit of the doubt because they earned it. Any team going from a 19-win season to the second seed in the Western Conference to the NBA Finals does not happen coincidentally. And with that being said, please let me know if you enjoyed the video in the comment section below. Also on the screen is...
Yep, well, that's going to be the end of this video. And that's like, comment, subscribe, but we out, bro.